Hi, my name is Michael Berrell. I'm an assistant professor at SUNY Farmingdale in New York. I teach graphic design and I have my MFA in graphic design. I also have a master's degree in education and development, which is kind of the combination and from my background of what led me to this. So, to start out, I want to talk about the MFA, right? So, what the MFA does for us, it's great at getting us to hone our craft, to get us to be creative, critical thinking, communication, working in ambiguity, problem solving, all those things that are great in the workforce and what we kind of need as designers. However, there's something I usually refer to as the MFA disconnect. And because so many of us go into higher education, this is because we often teach how we thought we were taught. Maybe we don't remember it great. For a lot of us, that was a very long time ago. And that's lecture heavy teaching. And we weren't trained in classroom management or in assessment. So let's talk about why that might be. The general education K through 12 journey is something like knowing you want to be a teacher, going to undergrad, picking a concentration, student teaching, getting a job, teaching, and then ending up in grad school, which is very different than the higher ed and MFA route that a lot of us take as creatives. That's typically, right, graduate high school, now what? Discover art maybe in undergrad, and then you graduate from there and you say, well, now what? And then you go into industry. Usually there's some existential panic. You enroll in grad school, you graduate from that, and again ask, now what? And somehow you find yourself in education. Mine itself, a little different, a little less conventional in terms of starting in design, going to education K through 12, teaching high school, teaching elementary school, back in education, adjuncting back in design, back and forth, getting my MFA, and winding up in higher ed. That's what led me to kind of realizing some of the things that I've seen. This presentation is mostly about effective strategies for MFA teachers, for higher ed, for people that have taught themselves how to teach. These are mostly buzzwords. These are things that we learn in education training. Yeah, methodology is 101, but they're things that you may not have come across as a higher ed teacher, and they're super useful tools. So let's start with the first one. Project based learning, PBL, is the one I probably don't need to tell most creatives about. It's the idea of teaching where students design, develop, and construct solutions to problems. It's project based learning. It's what we do every day with every project. But you would be surprised at how many math or social studies or history teachers maybe don't teach based on projects. So that's why we have that in it. Next is flipped classroom. This is something you've probably heard of, and this is the idea that the homework doesn't follow the lesson, but it precedes the lesson. We teach the homework first. That's where we introduce the new subject, and that leaves class time to try to reinforce instead of the other way around. And I'm going to come back to that one in a minute. The next one is jigsaw lessons. This is huge. Students don't love group projects, and I get that, especially design projects and design students. We don't like the idea of not knowing who's going to be in charge of what, and there's shared responsibility. What jigsaws are is you break out your teams into smaller groups first and you make them experts in a certain field. So, for example, round one, I have A, B, C, and D groups, and each group is responsible for becoming an expert in, the marketing, the printing, the branding, and the package design, for example. And then when we get to round two, we make sure that there's a person, an expert in each of those fields in each group so that they know what their responsibilities are. I combine this often with flipped classrooms. For example, when I do reading assignments, my homeworks, half the class will read chapter one, half the class will read chapter two, and the next class, they'll get paired up with somebody that read the opposite chapter, and they have to do presentations and tutor them in it to make sure that they've become experts in it, and it shares that workload. Next one I want to talk about is think, pair, share. I use this for critiques, for group projects, for brainstorming. It's a great way to give ownership and responsibility. Essentially, if I have a class of, say, 32 kids, everybody has to do their initial draft or their pitch for a project. And then I pair them up. And every pair pitches to each other. And the pair collectively decides which project has more legs or has a better chance at working. Then those groups, after they refine and reiterate a little bit, are paired with another group. Each group pitches, and now you have 4 students with one idea, so on and so forth to 8 to 16 until the whole class is working on one big project that they all feel has potential. Next is fishbowl. Fishbowl lessons are great for game design, interaction design, app design, a lot of things like that. I use them a lot, all over the place, even critiques. And that's where you take a group of students who did a project and you have other groups play test or app test or critique, and the students who did that work are in this outer circle. They essentially become ghosts. They don't interact. They silently observe and they take notes of how somebody else is interacting with their product. They can't explain it. They're not allowed to interject, and it gives them a lot more attention where they become much more aware of the details of how other people react with their stuff. Lastly, we have Socratic questioning, the easiest and kind of also the most difficult at the same time. It's the why game. It's open-ended questions. Everything my students do, every font choice, every color choice, I want them to be able to explain why, but it goes a bit deeper than that. It's not just them answering why they did something. I want them to ask each other why they did it. I want them to ask each other why in crit, and I want them to ask themselves kind of twofold. A, why did I use that font? Or B, why did he use that font? And why do I think it worked? Or why do I think it didn't work? And if you can get that, that's the hugely successful part of this one. Really getting them to dig in and ask why about each other and about themselves. Ultimately, what can design educators, higher ed educators, get from traditionally trained educators? It's this idea of treating education like our design, like our problem solving. It's using pedagogical strategy. It's using kind of classroom management and methodologies to create a inspiring kind of environment where students can continuously learn and reiterate. And I wanted to just end this with a John Dewey quote, again, kind of the father of our modern education methodologies, understanding that this is about not just a preset set of skills, but it's about getting students to their highest potential and being able to apply those skills. And that is my time. Thank you.